Welcome to Commercial Conversations Over Coffee, the show where two college dropouts turned real estate millionaires discuss all aspects of commercial real estate investing. Now, welcome your hosts, Tyler Cauble and apartment guy Bruce Petersen.
Hey, good morning, everybody. What is going on? I am Tyler Cauble, joined as always by my co-host, Bruce Petersen. Bruce, what's going on, man? What have you been up to this week?
Oh, well, been busy, but before we get into that, I just noticed that, I get apartment guy Bruce Petersen. We need to go Tyler, the mayor of East Nashville, Cauble. Right? We got to call you out some way.
Hey, I'll take it. If people want to call me the mayor of East Nashville, I will gladly accept that nomination. We'll secede from the whole of Nashville and start our own little community.
There you go. But had a really, really busy week. Me, separately in business, and then you and I together. But we just closed on a 256-unit apartment. We sold yesterday.
Congrats!
It took me a year and a half to get here through one bad buyer and a really good buyer, but we finally closed yesterday. So very, very welcome Christmas gift to our investors. So that was awesome. Just staying busy with everything else. And of course, you and I have a cash raise on probably the coolest project I've ever been a part of that we're in the middle of right now. So we got another, maybe 2 to 4 weeks to go on that, and we'll be full. And lots of exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's been pretty eye-opening going through such a large cash raise with you. I mean, you've been through so many, and mine have honestly, the largest I've ever done was like $1 million, and we're doing, $5.5 million on this one. So it's only 5.5 times larger than the one I've done before. So, no big deal.
Yeah, I've done 12 so far. So it never gets easier. It never gets less stressful. You got a good product with great returns, but if you can't raise the money for that, it doesn't do you any good. So, until you get it buttoned up, there's always a little anxiousness.
Yeah, I know. For me, it's the most stressful part of the deal. Like finding the land, putting it under contract, putting my money where my mouth is on that side of it, not a problem at all. I could do that in my sleep. But you get to the capital raise, and for whatever reason, like that to me is the stressful part of the deal. Everything else is fine. Is it kind of the same way with you?
Oh, it absolutely is. The rest of it we've done 100 times. We've managed, we've operated, we've communicated. But if you can't raise the money, it doesn't work. And, that's something we talked about last week about, is this for everybody? It maybe not. That cash raise, if it doesn't go well and you have to pull the plug, which very often you can pull the plug and get all your earnest money back within, anywhere from 30 to 60 days in multifamily or commercial. But if you pull out within time, get your earnest money back, you have a lot of sunk costs along the way. Right, you're going to pay your PPM attorney, syndication attorney. You're going to pay some other legal bills with your real estate attorney. You've got inspections you're paying for. So there's a lot that you put out, and if you don't get the money raised and you have to pull the plug, you'll get your earnest money back, but you're still maybe out of pocket $20,000 to $40,000. So there is some financial risk for the syndicator deal sponsor up until the day that you close, and then you got to operate it.
That's right. It's a significant amount of risk. We've got over six figures tied up into this deal already, and we haven't closed, right? So
right.
That's a pretty significant amount of risk, and that's just part of being a GP, though, right? Like that's part of being the guy that goes and puts the deal together. It's just part of the risk.
Yep. So for those that are listening, a few people might be interested. So before we get down our rabbit holes of the interview and the conversations, you want to talk about the deal we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it. You want me to cover it, or you want to go with it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the deal that we're doing, I wish I'd actually thought about it because I would have had an image that I could put up right here. But it is a 57,000 square foot outdoor food hall and event venue. And the reason I say outdoor food hall is that it's not your typical food hall. They are actually walk-up counters that have seating outside. And there's a little bit of seating inside as well, but it's kind of centered around this lawn. The whole point is that it's a post-COVID development. And what we want to really celebrate is outdoors and social distancing, but we're also celebrating startups and entrepreneurs. So every suite on site, I think the largest space that we have is the event venue. That's probably 7,000 square feet. But the largest retail space that we have is currently about 2,000 square feet. And in a 57,000 square foot, project, most people would have much larger suites than that, but we're kind of going for that startup entrepreneur type of feel. And so we've got suites as low as, 150 to 165 square feet. Most of the restaurant spaces are actually 400 square feet, give or take. And the retail goes anywhere from 400 to probably 800 square feet. So it's a little all over the place.
Yeah, it is a cool development. Like you said, we're trying to develop something that even if we get hit with another pandemic, because by the time this thing comes online, we'll be well past COVID, right? We've got vaccines flowing now. So we're going to be past COVID in 12 to 18 months when this thing comes online. But one other thing that we've done is we always look around. What can we do to differentiate ourselves? And what can we do that maybe somebody hasn't done yet? Everybody's starting podcasts. Everybody's being told to start a meetup, but there's not good podcasting or meetup spaces that are readily made for people. So we're going to purpose build a few rooms and spaces that are set up specifically for podcasting and general space that really is suited to holding meetups. So we're seeing what's going on around us. We're providing some of that at the property. We're creating an offload lane or a drop-off lane, if you will, out front, because we know a lot of people, younger people, they're more of this gig economy. They're not wanting to buy much of anything. They want to pay somebody else to drive them around town, right? So you're going to have a lot of Lyft and Uber and those kind of ride-sharing people drop people off at the restaurant or the retail spot here. So we're creating a drop-off space to accommodate a lot of that. So a lot of thought has gone into this.
Yeah, I agree. What's interesting is we actually started off this development as an apartment complex. I mean, we were going to build, right around 200 multifamily units. And we went down to Huntsville, this development called Stove House, which is where I got the inspiration for this project. And I actually went down there with the same architect, and I said, Jamie, I think we need to completely scrap our plans and start all over. This is exactly what Nashville needs. And he looked at me and he goes, I completely agree. There's just nothing like it in Nashville. And so, that's what one of the most exciting parts about it. And then almost serendipitously, I mean, after we changed the plans, 2 more apartment projects get announced right next door and one across the street. So we already had a couple hundred units going in next door to us. On the other side, there's a group that's got the land under contract for over 400 more multifamily units. And then across the street's another, I think it's over 150 at least, probably a couple hundred. So pretty exciting to see. I mean, there's a lot of rooftops going in right next to this that, all these people will be able to walk to.
Yeah, I agree. It worked out beautifully. There was enough absorption, or let's call it enough demand, for a lot of apartment communities in Nashville. And it would have been fine had we continued down that road. But, you're always looking for highest and best use of space. And I think this was a much better use of that space. So I think we've done a really good job of, again, seeing what's going on around and what do those residential people need that are coming to the neighborhood. They need places to shop. They need places to get a coffee, maybe have a beer, have dinner. So, yeah, I think it's going to be really, really well done. I think you said in the show notes you're going to have a link to get to the offering if anybody's interested, but just a high level and we can move on. It is for accredited investors. It's what's called a 506c offering. So you have to be accredited to participate, but our projection is 20% IRR within, the first 3 to 5 years. It's a wide range, right? Because we like to be very conservative, saying it might take us 5 years, but I really think it'll be closer to the 3 or 4 year timeline to hit that 20% IRR. But it's a really good return. Try to get money back into investors' hands as quickly as we can. And all of us make money together. So, go click on the link if you're interested.
Absolutely. Yep. We will leave that in the show notes below. It's probably not in there currently, but if you're watching the show after we've been live or you're listening to the podcast, it will be in the show notes on the YouTube channel. Just search for episode 002. Who is Tyler Cauble?
Yep. So kind of that's what we're up to. And now that we had our little pitch fest, right? I hate doing that stuff, but I want people to know about the fun stuff that we're doing.
Yeah.
So today is all about you, brother. So, last week we went through who am I, how did I get to where I am, and what. So now we're going to do it to you. So why don't you start? Most people probably know who you are, but some don't. Start with your background. How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What was life for you like, as a 10 to 12-year-old? I mean, what was your mindset? What was your environment?
Yeah, I think that's that'll be interesting. I mean, if you listen to the episode last week, you'll notice that Bruce and I kind of have, I mean, not kind of, we had completely different upbringings. I wouldn't say that I was spoiled by any means, but I grew up not wanting for anything. I had a great family, and I had a wonderful grandparents that were always there to support us. So, I grew up in a 6,000 square foot house, right? I mean, it's kind of the opposite experience that Bruce had, and I think honestly, that's probably one of the more interesting dynamics that we have is that even though we have these completely different backgrounds, we came to the same point. And, I think that that's one of the reasons that we work so well together, is that we kind of bring a different viewpoint, but we are aiming for the same thing. So anyway, I'm actually a Nashville native. There's not a whole lot of us left out there. I grew up going to private school, and, my parents got divorced when I was like 2 years old. So my dad moved back to Texas, didn't really grow up with him at all. And then about when I was 6 or 7, my mom got remarried. And so my stepdad actually ended up raising us, and he was in commercial real estate. He was a developer. So I had zero interest in it growing up, even though he took me out to ride dirt bikes on a site that he was developing out in Hendersonville. And I remember all that kind of stuff, which is that was the fun stuff for me. He was building a neighborhood that ended up having about 1,000 single family homes in it, and we got out there and rode dirt bikes. So when I was I guess I was 16, really when I was 15, my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and so that was really tough on me growing up. I think that. She's totally fine now. It's been, 13, 14 years that she's gotten clear scans. So couldn't be more grateful for that, to be honest with you. But it was that, when I was 15 and then 16, parents got divorced. So, I'm no longer really associated with the man that raised me, right? I mean, he was my stepdad. I called him dad. And so, that was pretty hard, but it really, I'm the oldest sibling of all of my, I've got 6 brothers and sisters because parents got divorced, both got remarried and had more children. But it very quickly thrust me into a sink or swim situation, right? So, my mom is still recovering from everything, and I'm not going to be a financial burden on my family. So, it's every summer since I was 12, I actually worked in construction for my grandfather. And when I say worked in construction, I was the kid that held the shovel and dug ditches. It was, but it was fun. And they gave me a sledgehammer, and I was the guy that just went in there and started knocking down walls. I mean, I wasn't skilled by any means, but I loved working with my grandfather every summer. And it taught me a lot about real estate and construction. It was really fascinating to me always. And so when I went to college, when I graduated high school, I actually got into sales. I sold knives for Cutco, and that was one of the most pivotal moments of my life because that's when I learned, okay, I could sell the hell out of some knives, right? And these are just kitchen knives. So, I got my hands on every knife that I could so that when I went on these appointments, I could sell the largest knife sets. And, I broke every sales record I could get my hands on. I think the average Cutco rep sells about $3,000 in their lifetime. And I sold well over $200,000 in about 15 months. So wow. I was really, really rolling with it. And I loved it. I had so much fun doing that, but they had phenomenal sales training. And so, I kind of had this raw natural talent already because it was super easy for me to just have conversations with people. But then you add that in with psychology and sales tactics. And, it's like adding a match to gasoline. So did really well with that. Went to the University of Tennessee. And I went to an incredible high school in Nashville. And I'm, super grateful for that experience. MBA taught me a lot about, not just, how to learn, but, how to be a gentleman, scholar, athlete. That was the whole the mantra there. And that, honestly, I learned more in high school than I did in college. And that really started to show when I went to college. I couldn't stand it. I didn't enjoy it one bit. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed like really being challenged. And, you know, it's funny, like I went to FRA before I went to MBA. So MBA starts 7th through 12th. And I went to FRA before that, which is where my mom went. And I was a C&D student at FRA, which was, you know, it's a great private school. But MBA is notoriously one of the most difficult academical, schools in the state of Tennessee and possibly the Southeast. I mean, probably one of the top in the Southeast. And so the only reason I got in is because one of the major donors at MBA wrote a letter basically telling them to let me in. And I was an A and B student at MBA. I mean, I graduated with a 3.4, which is not all that great, but I was good at school. And it's amazing how having the right teachers in the right environment can really change that for you. But when I went to college, completely different. I mean, the level of education at the University of Tennessee was just nowhere near what I was getting in high school. And in fact, my English teacher actually brought me in one day after I wrote a paper and accused me of plagiarism. She was like, there's no way that a freshman at the University of Tennessee could write a paper like this. And I was like, well, so MBA, so the Dead Poet Society, have you ever seen that movie, Bruce?
Oh, great movie.
Yeah. So, that's based on MBA. That's based on my high school.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's based on a teacher that was at MBA. And I think an MBA graduate actually
taught by Robin Williams?
Do what?
You were taught by Robin Williams?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, getting up on the desk and, playing Patch Adams. Yeah, that's I wish. Cool. That'd be hilarious. So to tell you, like, that's kind of the background that I came from. It was a very, English-driven school. So we wrote 6 papers a year, 5 to 6 page papers a year from 7th grade to 12th grade. So I had, 30 plus papers that I could, prove like this is my writing. I've been doing this for so long. So obviously got clear to that. But, I was sitting in geology class one day, which was a class that I had to take, and sitting there going, why do I need to know about pyroclastic flow when this is not going to apply to anything that I want to do with my life? And it was something that I had learned in 8th grade. And that, in combination with the fact that I wasn't making any money anymore because I wasn't able to do sales. I was having to do school. The University of Tennessee's football program was horrible. I mean, it was just, we lost every game we could possibly get our hands on. I think we lost to, Vanderbilt and the University of Kentucky for the first time in like 20 years. And then my fraternity got kicked off campus. So I was like, there's literally no point in being at college. So much to the chagrin of my family, I dropped out. And I hung out in Knoxville. So I finished my freshman year, dropped out about a month into my first semester, my sophomore year. Hung out in Knoxville and worked on a startup. I had this idea that, the fraternity, the Greek system was really fragmented. You buy your T-shirts over here and you'd pay your dues over there. And, you'd schedule parties and events over here. And it was just very broken up. And so the thought was, well, we'll create one website that will integrate all of these into one place. And it won't serve as a social platform by any means, but it will become the platform for Greek life. And so I worked on that for a bit, ended up bringing in the wrong partner to develop. So I learned that early on. Do not bring in a partner that you just give equity to until their portion of the deal is completed. Have them earn it. So that fell apart. I ended up moving back to Nashville. Kind of bummed it out for a couple of months at my mom's place. I was still living off of some money that I'd made at Cutco and literally just was sleeping in until 10 or 11 and waking up and doing nothing all day till she kicked my ass out of the house and said, you're getting a job and you're moving out. So I went to work for my grandfather, and I was doing project management and construction again. And I did that for about 3 months before my former stepdad actually reached out to me. He heard I was back in town. And he knew that I was good at sales. And so he said, look, we've got, a 150,000 square foot shopping center anchored by Target. And we've got a 57,000 square foot office building in Midtown. And This was in 2013. So we were coming out of the recession. Both of those properties had about 30% vacancy, which for Class B, B plus properties is really high. I mean, that's a problem. So, he said, look, I'm not getting the attention that I need or deserve from these national firms because they've got all these other listings. I want to bring somebody in-house to work solely on these projects and stabilize them for me. So I had to have a tough conversation with my grandfather because, I was planning on taking over his company, and because, he'd founded it in 1972 and grew up working in it. And, it meant so much to me to be able to work with him and to, think about the legacy that I would be able to continue on. And, I just kind of posed it to him. I said, look, what do you think? Because, at this point I hadn't spoken to my mom's ex-husband for years. And, but it seemed like a pretty good opportunity. And my grandfather was like, no, you gotta go do this. That's a great opportunity. It's a great offer. You can always come back and work with me if it doesn't work out. So, that's how I got into commercial real estate. He paid for me to get my license and gave me that shopping center and that office building to go lease. And so, day one, I'll never forget walking into the office and going, okay, cool. I've got my license. So what do I do now? And he was just like, go find me a tenant and I'll show you what to do. And I was like, okay, great. So I just literally started knocking on doors.
So you went from Cutco and their training program to just bring me somebody and figure it out.
Oh yeah. I went from like regimented structure, which I loved. I was on my own, but I kind of thrived having a manager, like kind of a coach. I mean, that's really what my manager was at Cutco, to just, hey, go do your own thing, figure it out. Like, push me off the boat, no life preserver, just figure out how to swim. So I started knocking on doors and cold calling, and we ended up, it took me 6 months before I made $1, which was kind of tough, but that's part of commercial real estate. Honestly, that was sooner than most people make money in commercial real estate. Typically, if you start off as a broker, you shouldn't expect to make any money for the first 6 to 12 months. So, from that respect, I think I did pretty well. But, that first year I made $40,000 in commissions, which was detrimental to me. I mean, it was the most disappointing thing that could have possibly ever happened because I'm looking at it going, okay, well, I made $80,000, $100,000 last year selling knives. Like, I'll easily make 6 figures selling, commercial real estate. I'm going to come out and crush it my first year. I'm going to be a millionaire by my second year. And just not even remotely close. My second year, I was looking at my tax return. I made $40,500. I made literally $500 more than I did the year before.
How old were you?
At this point, I'm 22.
Okay.
I'm 22. So I started in commercial real estate when I was 21. And so think about that. Like, I'm 22. I've dropped out of college. I'm making $40,000 a year, and I'm watching all of my friends graduate. And I've just made $40,000 a year 2 years in a row. And I'm thinking to myself, I got really depressed because I started thinking, man, I've really screwed up my life. I mean, all of my friends are graduating with degrees. I'm making no money, and maybe I did really make a mistake by dropping out. When I dropped out, I was so confident in what I was going to do. And so that was a little tough, but instead of crying about it, I decided to kind of kick my ass into gear. So I ended up doing everything that I possibly could, because up until that point, I had only been focused on those 2 properties. I wasn't really going out and meeting other people in the industry. I wasn't meeting other brokers. I wasn't talking to other developers. I wasn't talking to property owners. And so I said, you know what, this year is going to be the year of networking. I'm going to go out and I'm going to meet everyone. I'm going to join every, chamber there is. I'm going to join every entrepreneur organization there is. And I joined BNI. And that year I tripled my Business Networking International. It was it's like everybody in that group has their own chair. So like I was the only commercial real estate broker, right? There was a landscaping guy, and there was an HVAC technician, and there was a general contractor. So, the whole point was everybody, gets to know each other really well so that you trust each other and can send referrals, because everybody's out there. Basically, it's your own sales team. And so, that year when I joined the chamber, I joined the Entrepreneur Center, I joined, all these organizations, tripled my income. I mean, tripled it, like just effortlessly. I wasn't doing anything different other than just meeting people and talking to them and telling them what I did. And so that to me was like, man, that's the secret right there. You don't need to work harder, just work smarter, get out and market better and talk to people. And so that's when I kind of started getting into, the whole branding side of what I do. And that's ended up becoming one of the biggest things that I've ever done, right? I grew the beard. And it ended up sticking. And commercial real estate, the glasses, it works.
Same thing. That and this. I don't have a beard. I'm 52 and I can't grow one, but I'm known for scruff.
That's fine. You got to have the stubble. It looks good.
Yep.
So I, every time I would go into these events, I'm the young guy with the beard, right? Like everybody else is 50s, 60s white guy and clean shaven wearing a suit. And that's just never been who I am. Like I kind of grew up in that Bellmead blue blood kind of arena, but that's just not me. I've got a beard. I'm covered in tattoos. I live in East Nashville, which is like the Brooklyn or the Portland of Nashville. It's kind of where all the cool F&B is and all the hipsters are. And
the shirt unbuttoned out there everywhere you go.
We show the chest hair. We wear flat bills. It's totally cool. It's funny. I actually hopped on a call yesterday with a digital design consultant that we're working with on one of our projects out of Atlanta. And I'd only had phone calls with her, and she was like, "You look nothing like what we thought you were going to look like." Because I don't look like your typical commercial real estate guy. So I actually appreciated that. I took that as a compliment. So at this point, about 3 years into working, I'd stabilized those 2 properties and worked myself out of a job. I was like, oh no, if I don't go out and start doing something else, like I'm not going to make any money this year. So that's when I started taking on third-party work. I started representing tenants that were looking for space. The first company I ever did was a staffing company, and I took them to a shopping center out in Hermitage, which is about 10, 15 minutes east of Nashville. And I'll never forget over preparing for that one, because I was like, I'm not going to mess this up. This is the first one I've ever done, and blah, blah, blah. So that was fun. I started taking on third-party landlord work, so I started doing leasing for other people. And, up to this point, I was at a boutique development firm. They just happened to own some commercial real estate. So every week for 2-3 years, I was sitting in on construction and development meetings. And so I kind of learned how to put together a development deal. So I found a piece of dirt actually out in Bellevue, 2.71 acres over off of Highway 70 South. And, started talking to my mom's ex-husband. I was like, hey, what do you think about this? I think that we could build some townhomes here, because that's what they were mostly doing, was townhomes. And, I think the price for the dirt makes sense. I think the dirt's like the last flat piece of dirt in Bellevue. Bellevue's like notoriously hilly if you're not familiar with Bellevue. And it took a long time, but we ended up negotiating with the owner to sell it to us at a reasonable price. And I put my first development deal together. The site was already entitled for 57 units. We could not fit 57 townhomes on there. We ended up fitting 42 townhomes, and the deal worked. We put together these beautiful – so Bellevue's kind of a sleepy suburb of Nashville. It's probably 10 minutes outside of town, and it's notoriously where a lot of millennials and young families live. So, I had this idea of let's build a townhome that's designed around millennials. So it's 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and it's much smaller than your average townhome, because most townhomes, they're 1,800, 2,200 square feet. They're 3 stories, and, they can be on the more expensive side. Well, because we were able to do an 1,100 square foot product, it was 1,105 square feet. We were selling it for, I think we started at $230,000 a unit, which is an insane number if you think about new construction in Nashville now. That's so cheap. But back then, that's over $200 a foot on a product in a suburb that's not that hot.
What did
So
it cost you to build those?
it cost me $95 a foot, bricks and sticks, to build that. We bought the dirt for about $1 million, and I think my site development cost me about 1.1 or 1.2. So we were all in on that project at about 5 or 6 million, and we ended up exiting at about 10 or 11. So it was a really good project.
Right. So talk about that for a second. So you a little more than doubled your money. It sounds like you drove it up about 110, 115%. Was that, we talked a little bit about this last week, was that the pure numbers? Was there debt involved? So was your return even higher than that? How did that work?
Yeah, so that was one part that I wasn't 100% involved in, which, really frustrated me. My mom's ex-husband he didn't want me to learn the finance side because, obviously, if I learned how to do the finance side of it, I knew how to do everything else. Why would I need him necessarily to do a deal? That's how
Right.
he looked at it. That's not how I looked at it at all. And so, there was definitely debt on it. I met with the bank a couple of times. I had the loan docs, but I was never involved in any of those discussions. So the way that firm worked, which works for some people, and to me, I would never do this, but there were two partners that self-funded every deal. They never raised capital. They never worked with investors, and they took all of the not only the operational risk on themselves, they took the financial risk too. And I think that's good for some people, like I said, but to me, you can't scale that. Like there's a certain point where you just don't have enough capital to go do another deal until you've sold out of this deal. And
Right. Right. So yeah, it's easier to be frank with people that are listening. It's much easier because there's not, 10, 20, 30, 40 people in the deal that you have to manage and communicate with. But yeah, the big part, if you really want to grow something like Tyler and I are and have, you really need other people on your team. And that a lot of times are limited investors. So yeah, I like what you said there, that it enabled you, it enables you to scale.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so, I didn't know any better, right? Like I just thought this is how you do development deals. You have to make, a hell of a lot of money on your own, and then you have to put all of that money into one deal, and you got to hope that it works, right? So, which again is fine for some people, but so yeah, we had debt on it. I would imagine, I think we probably paid cash for the dirt, and then we used that as leverage with on the construction loan.
Gotcha.
So kind of like what we're doing with the provision area, the deal that we were talking about earlier, we're going to buy the land and then we're going to use that as leverage, when we go get the construction loan. So, I would imagine that $1 million, give or take, was about what we were in it for. So, you can run the margins on that. There's a $5 million differential, whatever 7% costs are. It was a pretty good run. It was a good profit on that deal.
Yeah, while you a little more than doubled based on what you just said there, you potentially had a 4 or a 5x return because you maybe only had $1 million, even $1.5 million, and you make a $5 to $6 million profit. Guys, that's why we use safe levels of leverage, because it changes your return structure completely.
That's exactly right. If we had paid all cash for that, we probably would have taken the arguably quote unquote safer route, but we would have only doubled our money. Whereas, we had $1 million into it and we used leverage. We had to pay off the debt and we had to carry the debt, and that goes on the balance sheets. But, at the end of the day, we, 4 or 5x'd our money. So, I would rather 4 or 5x my money and take a little bit of the financial risk than, play it safe and put all of my eggs into one basket. Because, what that allows you to do is, instead of having $5 or $6 million tied up in one deal, you can have $1 million tied up in 5 or 6 deals.
Exactly. That's where I was going next. It's not only that you get a better return, but now you can leverage, instead of one deal, now you can do 5 deals. So each deal might pay you a little less, but you add all 5 deals together, and my Lord, now you're talking serious money.
That's exactly right. And you're spreading out your risk, right? If one deal fails, which, there's always that potential. It's real estate. Something can always happen, right? If one deal fails, you're totally fine. If you have 5 or 6 deals going, if one deal fails and all of your money's in that one deal, it's kind of tough for you to come out of that. And it's kind of like why you would buy multifamily as opposed to a single family home. You have 10 renters move out of a 200-unit apartment complex, and you are totally fine. You don't even hardly notice it. You have 10 renters move out of a 10-plex, you are in a lot of trouble. So it just mitigates your risk.
That's another really important thing that you mentioned there, that, look, you said, if one goes down, if we lose on one, we still have 4 or 5 others contributing. So I want everybody to hear that neither one, Tyler or I, have ever lost money in real estate, but we always approach it assuming it could happen. There could be another black swan event that we just can't prepare for, like Corona. Corona could have been worse from a financial standpoint than it has been. It's been bad, but it could have been worse, right? So we always go into it assuming there's a chance that things can go wrong beyond our control. So I love that you said that again, we've never, ever lost money. I don't think we ever will, but there's always that potential. So thanks for mentioning that.
That's right. I mean, the worst deal I've ever done ended up getting my investors an 8% return, and it was like, I had the same story that you had last week, where you're like waking up in the middle of the night sweating and crying and like trying to figure out what you're going to do for your investors. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, I promised these guys a much higher return. And it's like, dude, no one cares. We're getting 8% on our money. That's, the deal did not hit where it hit, where we all thought it was going to. But we decided to invest with you, and we believe in you, and you're still getting 8%. Like, that's better than just almost any other investment, vehicle. So, that worked out well. So, obviously developments take a long time. I mean, we were working on that for probably 2.5 years. So in the meantime, I'm still selling commercial real estate, building my brand there. And, I actually started working on a $110 million development up in Hendersonville, next door to that shopping center that we were working on. The company still had, 20 or 25 acres remaining. And so I was kind of, helping master plan that. We were going for this beautiful mixed use. It was almost, honestly, it would have been ahead of its time back then, because we were kind of going for this micro unit style, like, we're going to have small apartments with smaller retail and smaller office space. Because we were thinking, well, the Hendersonville market, that's, we don't want anything too big, right? Because we had a World Market, and World Market was struggling. They came back to us every month. And this is back in, 15, 16. They're like, yeah, we're probably not going to renew. We don't, we need you to lower our rent. And we were like, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. And so World Market ended up moving out. But, that's just part of big box retail, right? Like, that side of the investment world is dying. But we were working on that development, and then, things got sideways on the townhome deal. Basically, we finished it out, and they didn't want to pay me my share, and I didn't have everything in writing that I thought. I didn't have the money when I was 25 to hire a legal team to put together operating agreements and all that stuff. And to be fair, it's, part of it's on me, because they had told me, look, if you want to memorialize this partnership, you need to pay for the agreements. And looking back, that's so unfair, because they knew that I didn't have the money to do it. When it closed out, I was like, well, where's my share? And I'll never forget this. I have it literally in writing. He said, if you want your money, you're going to have to sue me. And I was just blown away. And couldn't believe that. So obviously left. Overnight, we had issues before, and so my grandfather actually had a real estate company. He had his license, so he had renewed it, and because we had been preparing for a little bit that something might happen, and this was 4.5 years into it. It finally did. So I moved my license to my grandfather's brokerage, changed the brokerage to the Cauble Group, and literally the next week I closed a deal. So, it was off to the races, and, I consulted an attorney, several attorneys, and I had everything in writing, because we had communicated all of the agreements through email. And in Tennessee, a contract, anything in writing that's agreed upon by two parties is a contract. And they said, look, you have a case, you will win. By my estimate, my share of that development was at least $250,000. And keep in mind, I'm 26. So, that's life-changing money. But what they said was, this is going to drag on for 2 or 3 years. You're going to be in a lawsuit suing them for 2 or 3 years, and you already don't have any money. And so, I found an attorney that was willing to take it on contingency. And I eventually just woke up one morning and I was like, you know what? I don't want to wake up every morning with a sick feeling in my stomach. So I let it go. I ended up not pursuing the legal recourse that everybody thought that I could. It was a really difficult decision for me to make because, again, it's life-changing money. But it was the best decision I could have ever made, because instead of focusing my next 2 or 3 years on that one lawsuit and trying to get, that one lump sum of cash, I started my own company. 6 months later, I started a commercial property management company. And that's been the most life-changing thing for me, was starting my own ventures.
Well, and you said that you let it go and, you just had to write it off, and $250,000 is a lot. And that's absolutely true for anybody, no matter what stage of life you're in, much less 26 years old. But, my role on this podcast we talked about last time is going to be mindset. But think about that. I had a similar situation about 3 years ago. Somebody sued me and they were wrong and they were accusing me of stuff that I knew I was right on. I could have fought them forever, but we just decided to settle and move on. And I was sitting with a guy at a happy hour one night, and he wanted to go burn the dude's dog and kick his house for me. I'm like, dude, I'm done with it. I've moved on. This was my best friend, right? So I said, I've moved on. And he said, oh, no, you can't do that. I was like, the longer I let that human being take up residence in my brain, he still controls me.
Yep.
If you hadn't have walked away like you did, which is emotionally tough, it's egotistically tough because he got me. He won. No, you win if you can move through your life. And now you're a bigger success than you would have been if you kept beating that horse to death. His shit will come back and bite him in the ass someday if it hasn't already. You can't worry about them. You got to learn time to move on, time to cut my losses and go.
Exactly. And you want to know the amazing thing, you and I have discussed this before, but, I started the firm in February of 2018, bought my first building that month. I bought my first building in 2019. So I closed on 2 more in June, and I believe it was by July of 2019. So within a year and a half of leaving, I went from 0 net worth and probably negative, because I'm sure I owed a lot of taxes, because when you're a commercial real estate broker, you get 1099, you forget about taxes, you spend money you probably shouldn't. So I had to catch up on a lot of taxes. Went from a 0 or possibly negative net worth to, by the time I was 27, I was a millionaire. And it was incredibly liberating to realize, like, one, how easy commercial real estate can be if you're with the right people, if you're working with the right people and you're approaching it the right way. But 2, to think, man, if he never screwed me out of $250,000, I would probably still be working for them, making $60,000 a year, happy as a clam.
It's silver linings, right? There's always some sort of silver lining, no matter how bad you think it is. First of all, it could be worse. But you have to take all that, pardon my language, but you take that kick in the nuts and you think, okay, how do I pivot and make this work for me? I'll never forget the day my wife and I were in Park City, Utah. We're there for the month of August last year in 2019. The 3 of us, you, me, and her, were on a phone call. When you actually called us, we're out for a walk or out for a hike. And we had been talking to you about a week or 2 later about how valuation of a business works and everything. And I remember, so you called about a week and a half later and said, hey, I got great news. I'm like, oh, good. You got us a building. You got us a No, because you understood how to properly value a company. Now you're like, I'm actually a millionaire. I'm like, that was one of the coolest calls. I'll be honest. It wasn't for me. It was for you. But that was honestly one of the best calls I've ever received in my life. That was so amazing.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I was so fired up. I mean, you were obviously the first person I called. Like, I was like, I don't know who else I could share this with. I'm calling Bruce right now. And it was so cool.
Sorry, I keep doing this, but see, that's another key point. You didn't know who else you could share that with. So, guys, I want you to put yourself in Tyler's head, in his situation. What would happen to you if you were in his situation and you realized that I am now worth $1 million, or I sold a property and made $100,000? Do the people that you spend the majority of your time with, are they people you can share that win with? This is a momentous thing in your life. And if the answer is no, you might have really good people in your life, but my guys, my friends, I'm telling you, you have to elevate the people you're hanging around. You need to be hanging around people that are having similar successes in their lives. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you spend your time with people that work for minimum wage, they're good people, but that's not helping you thrive and succeed. And you have nobody you can share these amazing experiences with. So that's a really big takeaway from this. I hope people get.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I was going to say. You're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. I learned that a couple of years ago, and that's when I kind of separated my friends, right? And it's not a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of part of growing up, but everybody ends up having different interests, and that's totally fine. Like, I still love and appreciate my friends from high school and, my buddies from college and whoever I grew up with. And some of them they're in that, empire mindset. I'm building something huge and this is where I want to go. And, those are the guys that, I can hang out by the pool and have a conversation about, on a Saturday, having a drink in my hand, like, let's talk about investing in real estate. And that's one of the greatest things ever. And then I've got some buddies, it's like, we catch up every now and then and we grab a drink and that, all we talk about is more social stuff. And that's totally fine. But, at some point I kind of started limiting how much I was doing that. Like, man, I'm 28, right? Most of my friends are still going out and partying on the weekends, playing video games. I don't do any of that. I mean, look, I'll go out and I'll have drinks every now and then, but what gets me excited is like waking up at 5 on a Saturday to start underwriting another deal. Like, that's what really gets me excited. And so, I'm very intentional about the people that I surround myself with now. And, that was one of the greatest things ever. Like, I couldn't share the fact that I became a millionaire at 27 with my high school friends because they're,
you're the douchebag friend at that point.
Exactly. They're like, okay, cool. Brag about it. It's like, I'm really not trying to brag. I mean, I don't go around saying, hey, I'm Tyler Cauble, I'm a millionaire. That's ridiculous. But, it is a milestone that everybody wants to hit at some point, and it's a huge milestone, and you should celebrate that, and you should feel okay sharing that with the right people. And so that's why I called Bruce.
Exactly. But also, how many of you listening now have the same mindset that Tyler has? He can't wait to wake up Saturday morning and work. Start to work. Most of it, I was this person until I was 42 years old. Dude, you start talking to me about work. When I wasn't at work, I'm like, I started to hyperventilate and have cold chills. I'm like, I hated my life and my job so much. Wouldn't you rather be where Tyler is? He wakes up on a Saturday at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning because he can't wait to start over again. Dude, it's such a better place to be mentally. And if people will, get over their fear, and I know some people will have a family and kids that you didn't have, so it was a little easier for you to be in this position, but you got to do what you got to do to get to the position Tyler is now in, because it just changes your life. You don't dread your life. You aren't miserable, depressed. So anyway, sorry, tangent there, but that was another thing that you said that really struck me.
Well, but I think that's true, right? I mean, I tell people, I think I'm the most boring person ever because they're like, so what do you do outside of real estate? And I'm like, man, I go camping and I might kayak every now and then, but honestly, like I do real estate 24/7. Like, this is all I think about. All I do, I go on walks. I listen to podcasts about real estate. I go into the office. I talk about real estate. I call Bruce on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock and I'm like, hey, I just had this idea. What do you think? And he's like, stop calling me at 9 o'clock at night.
Then like, I'll talk again tomorrow. I think I'm going to be thankful for this.
Like, it sounds really good. 2 bourbons deep. Call me tomorrow. Let's see if I have the same opinion. So
now, you've come along. Yeah, exactly. But you've come a long way now. You're doing these big development deals. You're a baller. You're the mayor of East Nashville. So your story is different than mine, but there are commonalities. But I want to talk about a few things that you said.
Yeah.
And kind of dig more deeply in here. So one thing that you said that it goes back to walking away from that lawsuit that you could have filed. You had the wrong partner on more than one deal. It sounds like maybe 2 different times. It's happened.
Oh yeah,
happened to me. But again, you get into a deal with somebody that doesn't go well or somebody does you wrong, not only do you walk away from the lawsuit, maybe that's gone. It's over. You have to move on. You have to be able to get up and keep yourself moving. So that was huge. You didn't wallow in self-pity. And most people, that's just what they want to do. They start drinking, they start doing recreational drugs, they whatever to unplug. Like, nope, it happened. Hell with it. I'm going to figure it out and I want to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I've just always had, and I understand and recognize that I'm very fortunate to just naturally have this mindset. But it's like, all right, okay, cool, time to move on. Let's step over that hurdle and keep going. Right? There's sitting and wallowing is not going to do anything about it. I mean, you can be upset, and but give yourself a certain amount of time to be upset. Like, look, 5 minutes, I'm going to scream and I'm going to yell about it and I'm going to bitch and I'm going to cry. After that 5 minutes, move on. It's not productive. It's not going to do anything for you.
Sounds like you know Hal Elrod. That's his
right.
5 minutes.
I was
Right.
say,
I remember. I think we
Hal.
were talking to him at the same time when he was bringing that up. That over at dinner, he said, "Look, I got the 5 minute rule, guys. I can bitch, moan, whine, complain, be depressed, be pissed all I want, but I only get 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, nothing else is going to change by me being pissed off at the world. So I just have to consciously cut it off and move on." So yeah, that's a Hal Elrod thing.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's, I had that mindset without knowing that was kind of the mindset, right? I mean, after a certain amount, it's just cool, move on. Let's go do the next thing. You'll live and you'll learn. I mean, you only fail if you don't take anything away from that, right? And so, now I had that happen twice, and it's okay. All right, well, I don't deserve to be in a partnership with anybody unless I can afford to pay an attorney to put together an operating agreement that clearly delineates what every person in this deal is responsible for and how it's going to go down. And, that's one of the great things about mine and Bruce's relationship. Every time we talk about a deal, it's like, look, just so that we're on the same page. And we do this all the damn time, all the time. Even though we've rehearsed it over and over again, here's how it's going to go. Here's what you're responsible for. We're going to put up the money. You're going to reimburse us. This is how it's going to go. And we're very clear and very open about that from day one. If you cannot have those conversations with your partner, they're not your partner. Like it's right. A marriage, right? Like if you can't have an open line of communication, what are you doing?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. But another thing you said too was, I think it was when you said you were 22 and some things didn't work out back then. And you said, man, what am I doing? I just screwed up my life. The thing I want people to understand there, and you were 22. I had that thought, sat in my mom's bedroom one night when I was scared I wasn't going to get out of high school. And I said the same thing to my mom. I think I ruined my life. You thought you screwed your life up at 22, but you didn't. It's all perspective. First of all, you're 22. You're still crazy young. But I had a lady call me one day. She just wanted to kind of get some advice and tell me where she was and, see if we were a good fit. She may want to invest with me in the future too. But she said, Bruce, I'm worried. I'm late in life. I'm 55, 56 years old and, time's running out. I said, okay, stop. You're going to make really dangerous, reckless decisions out of fear because you think you're running out of time. I told her straight up, I said, look, you're going to live another 60 to 80 years maybe. You need to think about that. You're in your 50s. So what? There's a good chance you're going to live into your hundreds with medical advances, and we're all taking better care of ourselves. So,
and we'll just upload you into the cloud anyway.
There you go.
We'll have the Matrix in our lifetimes.
But just put yourself in perspective. Put your life in perspective. I'm 30 and I haven't figured it out. So what? You got another 90 years maybe to live. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up because things didn't click for you at 22 or even 30.
Yeah, and that's one thing I have to constantly remind myself is, there's some statistic out there, and I'm going to completely make it up because I don't know what it is exactly, but it's like 80% of billionaires don't come up with the idea that makes them a billionaire until they're in their 50s, right? And so it's like, maybe I'm 22 and I didn't actually ruin my life, but honestly, like that mentality is what has made me so successful, right? Like I'm just driven to be as successful as I can possibly be. So the fact that I am not making six figures at 22 is the reason that I'm where I am today, because that was so detrimental to me. I knew what it was like going from having everything to having nothing. And I told myself, I'm never going through that again. I'm never going to put myself through that. I'm never going to let that happen to my family again. And so that's why I am where I am today, because I have that, like, we're going to go out, we're going to crush it, we're going to be incredibly successful mentality. And I think that's what you got to have if you want to be successful in this business. You can do well, you can make six figures, and you can do just fine by kind of half-assing your way through it. That's the great thing about real estate is, even a blind cat will catch a mouse every now and then, and you'll do really well. But if you want to be next level successful, seven figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, the 1% of your, the 1%, you got to get out there and bust your ass and just have that mentality that no one's ever going to beat you.
Right. So a couple of things there. The 1%, many people listening might not know this, but to be part of the 1% on an earnings basis, you need to make roughly $440,000 a year to be part of the 1%. So it's not as outlandishly big a number as you think. Now, don't get me wrong. That sounds like a douchebag, rich white guy talking, right? And I get it. I worked retail for forever. But again, it doesn't mean that to be a 1%, you have to make $1 million or $2 million a year. But you also talked about, I want to make as much money as I can possibly make or be as successful as I can possibly be. Do not apologize for being successful, people. Just don't do it. Don't let other people make you feel bad because you're successful. Now, if you're a piece of shit human being, okay, maybe feel bad about that. And maybe some of that led to your wealth, whatever. But don't feel that making a lot of money, being a very large success in business or financially, is a bad thing. A lot of people will try to tell you it is. They're wrong. All day, every day, they're wrong, right? Grant Cardone, you can like him or not like him. He's got a very polarizing personality that there's a lot about his personality I don't like, but he's got a lot of wisdom in the things he says. He says, you owe it to you, yourself, and your community and the world at large to be the most successful human being you can possibly be, because the more successful you are, the more good you can do in the world. So again, I'm going to beat the shit out of this, but don't apologize for being successful.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. I mean, I've got some friends that are, they're kind of along the lines of like anti-capitalism and, capitalism's ruined the world. And I want to focus my time on charitable ventures. And at heart, it's incredibly noble and it makes all the sense in the world, right? But you can live in poverty and dedicate your life to charity. And at the end of the day, all you have, all that you're able to give is your time and effort, right? And so what is that, 40 hours a week, that you could possibly do that? Well, what if you go out and you're incredibly successful in real estate, you make $1 million a year and you donate $500,000 a year to charity? How about that? Like, that's how you have an impact.
Right. And it's not just that, going back to the time value you talked about with 40 hours a week. So I was teaching a real estate class one night, and a guy comes up to me at the end. He said, Bruce, man, this was great. I really liked it, but you're telling me you could teach me how to make $1 million a year? Yes, sir. And the issue with that? Well, that's just obscene. I'm like, why is that obscene? He said, look, I'm an admitted hippie. We're in Austin, right? He said, I'm just a hippie chiropractor. I'm like, okay. And he said, well, I make about $40,000 to $50,000 a year doing it. And I said, well, but you tell me I can make $1 million. That's just obscene. There's so many people without. I was like, okay, so let's break that down. What is your favorite thing to do in life? He said, well, I do enjoy what I do, but once a year I get to take time away and go to a third world country, somewhere in South America, maybe Africa, and give away free chiropractic care for the week I'm there, because everybody can use chiropractic care, but in third world countries, developing nations, they can't really afford it. So I go in for a week. I was like, well, that's phenomenal. Oh my God, I love that. But how about if I could teach you how to make enough money that you could do that 51 weeks out of the year and work for 1 week a year? If I teach you how to make $1 million, let's say you even make 100,000. That's a lot of money. But if I can show you how to make $1 million, you're a good person. It's going to make you a better version of that good person, because now you have more means. So now he looked at me and he literally did this and he started to tear up, because nobody had ever helped him put it in perspective. Money's not bad. Money's not evil. Money's a tool. Now, if you are a tool you are probably going to make bad use of that money. But if you're a good person, it helps you help more people. It's leveraging. That's what it's all about. So sorry, big tangent. And I want to talk about, though, you wrote a book, right?
I did write a
Tell
book.
us the name of your book.
Yeah, Open for Business: The Insider's Guide to Leasing Commercial Real Estate. I
Why?
released that when I was 25. Yeah.
Okay, 25 years old. So why did you write it?
So, at this point, I'm over 4 years into the business, right? And I had started to realize that I loved working with startups and entrepreneurs. And that's the more difficult side of commercial real estate, right? Because they don't have a lot of money and they're going for smaller spaces. And so, because of that, it gave a young guy in the business opportunity because no one else is really going after this business because it's, there's not enough money. But I realized, like, man, I really do love and enjoy this. The issues that I saw kept happening over and over and over again. These business owners are incredibly well versed in what they need to do on a day-to-day basis for their business. But when it comes to leasing commercial real estate, they had no idea how they were supposed to approach it. And, it's not like signing that apartment lease that you did back in college where you go and tour the space, it looks good, they hand you the contract and you sign it. It's not like that at all. And, I saw many business owners time and time again that didn't know what they were doing, didn't get representation, didn't have a broker, didn't have an attorney. They just went in and trusted the landlord, signed these contracts, spent a whole bunch of money building out space, and got completely screwed. We had one retail, the girl was like 24, 25, and she had, gotten her family to invest, and she started this boutique. And she didn't have any representation. And she signed a lease accepting full responsibility for an HVAC unit that was like 15 years old. Well, of course, that's going to blow out. Commercial HVAC units are not like residential. They are big and they are expensive. And so it cost her $10,000 or $12,000 for this tiny little, like 1,200 square foot boutique to replace the unit. And there was nothing she could do. It's not her fixture. She can't take it with her when she goes, but she agreed in the contract to accept full responsibility for the HVAC. So I got brought in after the fact to help her sublease the space because she couldn't afford to be there anymore. And there was another time where a local doctor that I worked with, she had always wanted to start up a medical spa. And she decided to open up the medical spa immediately adjacent to her medical practice in the space next door because she could, have a staff that kind of runs it. And then she could go from, working with patients to doing Botox next door. Well, her office was in a blue collar area. I mean, a heavy blue collar area. And on that, it was on kind of a side street. So nobody's going to drive by and see this medical spa, let alone the right customer is going to go see it, right? And so she ended up signing a lease there, spent 6 figures on the build out, got taken advantage of by her contractor. The contractor didn't even put can lights in the ceiling. She had to put lamps in every corner so that she could light up the space. The contractor didn't build the actual spa. He went to Home Depot and bought a plastic tub. I mean, it's just, she just didn't approach it right, and she spent 6 figures and lost it all. And so I ended up having to come in and help her relocate the medical spa to a more appropriate side of town. And you just think about how much brain damage and money, was lost throughout all of that. And so, what I started realizing was that there was no guide out there for how to lease commercial real estate for business owners. It didn't exist. I mean, commercial real estate is shrouded in mystery anyway, but especially on the business owner side, there's no resources unless you're working with a professional. So that's why I decided to put the book together. I just, kind of chronicled like, hey, here's start to finish the entire leasing process for a business owner. And it's not it's not the Bible on leasing commercial real estate. It's a relatively short read. I think it's 150 pages, probably about the same, length that your book is. And it is intended to give a business owner enough knowledge about the process so that they know who to hire. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what entrepreneurs need. They need the right team. They don't need to learn how to lease commercial real estate.
Exactly. Know what you're good at, be good at that, and then hire other professionals around you. So, we talked a little bit about some of your trials, your tribulations, some of your struggles, but if you had to pick one thing on your travels to here, what has been your biggest challenge outside of just like one specific, deal that didn't go through? Is there like an overarching challenge? What was your biggest challenge to becoming who you are now?
I think the biggest challenge to becoming who I am now was honestly, hiring people. When you hire somebody and you promise them a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks, however you got it structured, that puts a different amount of pressure on you. And there were times where, deals would fall apart and I wouldn't have enough money. And, I made the conscious decision to keep paying my assistant or to keep paying whoever I needed to pay that was on my team. And, there were plenty of times when I was first getting started where, I couldn't pay the electric bill for a few months. So my electric got shut off and I just had to spend that week in, showering in the dark because that was just part of it. But, I wasn't going to let this person who depended on me go hungry because that's not fair. So I think that was probably the most, that happened several times because it's not easy starting a company, especially one that, the sales cycle is 4 to 6 months long. So, luckily I haven't had those issues in a couple of years now. But that it never leaves me. Every time, we're running payroll for the company, it always just reminds me of being in that place, and I'm grateful I'm not there anymore.
Right. So, something for people to learn by listening to that, I would think, would be you need more reserves than you think you do in a business. And a lot of people that, are new to entrepreneurship, they don't understand that, look, you need reserves. Don't rape all the profit out of the business. You have to properly fund or capitalize that business on the way in because things like this are going to happen. You will have a dry spell at the beginning. It's very, very common. For the unicorn that, will hit the ground running and sell $1 billion in the first 10 minutes they're open, the other 99.999% of startups, it's not going to happen that way. So you need to have ample reserves. Think again about COVID-19. If you didn't have ample reserves in your business because you made really poor capital allocation decisions, or you just didn't fund it with enough money up front, well, you're going to go under. Right? You've got PPP, you've got EIDL, all these programs for business owners provided by the stimulus and all of that, the CARES Act, but that runs out eventually if you got it at all. So to make sure things like that don't happen to you, you need to have reserves all the time.
That's exactly right. It's funny, I'd always tell my startups and my businesses that we were representing, like, you need 3 to 6 months of OpEx set aside. And it's kind of like the cobbler whose kids don't have shoes, right? Like, I didn't have 3 to 6 months of OpEx set aside, and so I learned from that pretty quickly.
Right, and then turn it to commercial real estate, like what we do. Some of the things that you and I are working on are completely empty buildings. Right. And I'll talk to people that are learning how to do this, how to invest in multifamily or commercial as a syndicator. So it's your job to underwrite the deal. Okay, well, you project you're not going to be, fully leased up for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. So that tells me you're going to have probably debt. So you're going to have loan payments. You're going to have to pay property taxes. You're going to have to pay insurance. There are some things that you still have to pay no matter what, even though there's nobody in the building yet. How are you going to pay those? Oh, I didn't really think about that. Well, guys, that's called negative payment. If you don't raise enough money as a syndicator, if that's the route you go, to cover those losses and raise cash up front, you can keep paying your bills until you do turn profitable. Well, guess what? You're either going to go upside down, go out of business, or you're going to have to go crawling back to your investors and own up to the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't ask for enough money up front. So now, hey, for that, $100,000, $10,000 in cash flow you thought you were going to get from this on your $100,000 investment, well, now your cash flow is going to be the same, but now I need another 100,000. So now you're returning that half. Your investors are going to be pissed, and good luck raising money from those people again. So again, reserves, I cannot stress how important they are now.
Yeah, one of the last things you ever want to do when you're the sponsor, the GP on a deal, is go back and have a capital call. Hey guys, sorry, we kind of underestimated, the whole deal, and now we need to get more money from you. Sometimes there are things that you just cannot foresee that come up that, this is the best solution. But if your investors can tell it's because you just didn't do something properly, they will never invest with you again because they
Right.
know that
So
you don't know what you're doing.
exactly. So our approach to negative carry, Tyler and I, and the deals that we do, let's say we're projected to lose $100,000 in the first year while we have it built out and or leased up, whatever the case is if we buy an empty building, right? So we think we're going to lose $100,000 through underwriting. We're always going to stack 20% contingency money on top of that. So we're carrying in $100,000 in a reserved account to pay our bills until we're profitable. We're actually going to put $120,000 in there. Again, it's not only having that negative carry accounted for, but have some extra. Because like you said, Tyler, there are things that are going to happen that you're not going to see coming. So just, you got to be conservative. And a lot of people say, well, if I'm not conservative, then the deal doesn't work. Well, then the deal shouldn't work. If you can't do it and be conservative with you and your investors' money, don't do the deal.
I tell people that all the time. Like, if you can't afford to have an attorney put together an operating agreement, right? Because I have personal experience. If you don't have money to have, the property inspected properly, it probably, if you don't have the money to hire a property management company to manage it for you, the deal probably doesn't work because one thing goes wrong and you're losing money. Like, that's not a deal. I mean, the first deal I ever did, I've always, I started off when I started investing, like after that development, I started off in the heavy value add arena, the side that everybody is, terrified of, right? Because you got to come in, you get a completely vacant asset, you got to renovate it, and then you've got to reposition it, fill it up with new tenants. And luckily we had enough reserve going into it because, the HVAC unit, even though we had it inspected and it was doing totally fine, ended up blowing out about 2 or 3 months into our owning the property. And guess what? We had to pay, it was a huge unit. I think we paid $18,000, which would have had to have come out of pocket if we didn't have that set aside and we didn't prepare for it. And so, it was good to have that already in the underwriting. Like, it didn't really impact the deal. We kind of anticipated something like that would come along. So my investors weren't really upset about it. Part of it.
Right. And one thing that you said to kind of illustrate this point too was if you can't afford to pay a property management company, then that's a hugely important thing too. Say, oh, but I'm going to manage it myself. Well, okay. And that's fine. So you don't have to pay somebody. Great. But let's say something happened. You get sick, you get injured, you can't work, or you just don't want to do it anymore, or you suck at managing the property itself. You knew how to do a rehab, you knew how to buy it, but you don't really know how to operate it. Well, now you might have to go hire a third-party management company. So if you don't assume a management fee that you pay to yourself if you're going to do it, but now I got to go out and hire somebody else, well, that's probably an expense you didn't anticipate. So build that into your numbers on the front end that you're going to have to pay a property management fee, but I'm going to do it. Well, then pay it to yourself. Because if for some reason you decide you don't want to do it anymore, we've already got the budget category allotted to hire somebody. So again, these are the things that I firmly believe in. Again, like we said last time, I don't want to be your coach. I'm not asking to be your coach, but guys, you need a coach. Because we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. We're going to cover everything on this podcast. But if you don't hear every episode and you don't stitch it all together to make one comprehensive guide, you need a coach that's going to be in your corner. So guys, please don't do this on your own.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, even when we have general contractors or architects or engineers that are partners in the deal, we pay everybody market rates, because if the deal doesn't work by paying them market rate, then the deal doesn't work. Because what happens if they go out tomorrow and get hit by a bus? Like, of course you don't want to think about that, but we don't want the deal to sink because we underwrote it incorrectly and now they're unable to do their part of the deal, right? And so, this is just personal. I don't let anybody contribute their profit from, whatever portion they're doing as equity into a deal. You're going to come in as every other partner is, and you're going to keep your profit from whatever you're doing. And we're going to pay you market rates. That's just kind of how we like to set things up. One thing I want to touch on too, going back to the property management thing. I mean, if you really want to do it yourself, cool. That's great. How scalable is that though? I mean, that's, we were talking earlier about scalability. Sure, maybe you can manage, 1, 2, 3 properties, but do you really want to be managing 1, 2, or 3 properties while you're on the beach in Mexico? Like, that just doesn't sound like fun to me. What happens when you get to 5, 6, 7, 10 properties? now you've got to hire a management company to really oversee your portfolio, and maybe you've got deals that just don't work with a management fee. That's a problem. So, always think about how something can scale. You've only got so much time, and I know what I'm best at. I'm best at going and finding a deal and putting the vision together, and then stepping back out and letting my team do the rest.
Right. If you're going to work as that property manager in your example, then that's probably on a very small deal, maybe a $30,000 a year job. A big deal, maybe an $80,000 to $100,000 a year job. But I would guess that you're best suited at the sales, getting the next deal, raising money for a deal. That's probably has the potential to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So don't take somebody's $15 an hour job thinking you're making money by saving money. That's just the wrong way to think about building a business. You're worth a hell of a lot more than $30,000 a year. Pay somebody else, put them in that position. Well, they can't do it as well as I do. Look, 80% of your effort by somebody else is still better than you doing it, because now you can have their 80%, and you can go do your 100%. So now you're paying somebody $30,000 to $50,000 a year, and you got 180%. So I know lots to unpack there, but just think about it that way. But I know we're coming up. We got about 10, 15 minutes left. But, I kind of jokingly said at the beginning that you are Tyler, the mayor of East Nashville, right? My wife's nickname for you is Pumpkin, right? But I call you the mayor of East Nashville. So, talking about that, what are your big goals? What's your big vision for East Nashville? Because I think you brought me in, but you primarily have this vision for East Nashville that you want to kind of dominate. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So, very early on, when I first started my commercial real estate career, I worked for a boutique development firm. And yeah, we were building a lot of townhomes, but we had office space and retail space and industrial space, and we were building a 144 unit apartment complex. And so I kind of worked on everything, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. I loved working on everything. And the problem I see with a lot of, the major, big five commercial real estate brokerages is that they go, okay, you are the single tenant industrial guy, tenant rep. And you get so niche down, like, yeah, maybe you can be the guy in the country for that, but you're a one-trick pony. And to me, that just didn't seem like a lot of fun. I wanted to, kind of do a lot of different things. But I knew I still needed to niche down, right? And so right before I start, probably 6 months before I started the company, I did a deal in East Nashville because of my buddy Brandon over at Wagon Wheel Title. And I was like, man, I've never really spent any time on this side of the city, and fell in love with it. I mean, it was just, everything about it has so much character. It's so cool. It's, I hate to use this buzzword, but it's authentic. And, Nashville has just gone through this massive, massive expansion. I mean, when I was a kid, Nashville shut down at 10 o'clock at night. And now we've got 100 people a day moving here, and it's, an 18-hour city. And so, a lot of what, used to be kind of the cool local hangouts, they're popular places now. And so, a lot of tourists go there. It changes things. East Nashville has always been that just raw, side of town where the creatives can be creative and do really cool things. And so I was like, you know what? This side of town is kind of neglected, because it was really, it's been coming up for the last 10 years or so. It used to be the side of town that you just did not go to. And, it's coming up. Nobody's really focused over here. A lot of the brokers that are doing projects over here, it's, kind of because somebody happens to own something over here, and they're also doing a deal for them over off of West End. So I guess I'll help you out in East Nashville. And I became one of the first brokers in Nashville to actually niche down into a neighborhood. I said, you know what? East Nashville is where I want to be. I don't want to cross the river. I'm going to stay on this side of town, and I'm going to do some of the coolest projects I possibly can. And that's what we've been doing. I mean, obviously we're the biggest commercial real estate brokerage in East Nashville. We've got listings, all over the place. We know this market better than anyone else. And that was one of the best marketing ploys that I could have ever done, because even other brokers will refer people to me going, if you want to be in East Nashville, you got to call Tyler. Like, he knows everything over there. And so, I want to buy every single piece of property in East Nashville that I can possibly get my hands on. I mean, just geographically, it's one of the best located neighborhoods in the city. You've got quick access to downtown. You've got I-65 going north. You've got Ellington Parkway going north. You've got two major thoroughfares, two major corridors with Gallatin and Dickerson Pike. You've got the Briley Parkway, which is an east to west loop. So the connectivity is unparalleled, and you're incredibly close to downtown. So you just think about the potential for this area in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And you look at Nashville and compare it to Chicago, right? Like all along the riverfront in Chicago, you've got these massive skyscrapers. Well, there's nothing like that in East Nashville. You go from all of these, 20, 30, 40, 50-story towers downtown, you cross the river, it's all like 3 stories. So to me, there's just a lot of potential there. And I love working with startups, entrepreneurs, and creatives. And this side of town just attracts them. So that's what I want to do in East Nashville. I want to buy every building that I can. I want to develop really cool properties over here. The cool thing about what we get to do as commercial real estate professionals, especially for me, because I'm from Nashville, the city's given me so much, is that I get to give back to it. And, we create these incredible places where things happen for people, right? Like you take this raw piece of land and you can put a coffee shop on it, or you can put a restaurant, or you put, an event venue, right? Like what we're doing at the Provisionary. And now it becomes a hub. There's, all these people are going there and having these experiences that they never would have had otherwise. And to me, there's something just, magical and beautiful about that.
That's really cool. And you've also got another deal. So you talked about the Provisionary. We're on Dickerson Pike there. So what other project do you have currently kind of in the works in East Nashville?
Yeah, so we bought a car wash. Thanks for the plug, Bruce.
You're not going to start washing cars?
Yeah, I'm going to start washing cars. I'm pulling a Walter White. I'm actually just going to launder my drug money through it. So we bought, one of the bays in there was definitely where people were selling crack. I mean, it's been a decrepit old car wash for years. But I bought this little 6-bay car wash with a couple of partners, and we are converting the bays into micro restaurant concepts. So each bay is about 390 square feet. We're going to deliver them to these restaurant concepts they're basically walk-up counters. So there'll be picnic tables outside and kind of some bags, games where they can hang out and drink and have fun. But it's basically walk-up counter kitchens. You can call them a retail-facing ghost kitchen, which is super popular now. But we'll deliver it with a hood vent, a 3-compartment sink, a grease trap, and a walk-in cooler. And we're kind of revolutionizing how restaurateurs can start their companies, right? I mean, one of the biggest issues with the restaurant industry right now is that it costs 6 or 7 figures to build out a restaurant, and you've got to sign a 5 or a 10-year lease. But what if you have an idea for a concept and it's never been tried before and you don't know how it's going to go? Are you willing to bet that much on are you willing to gamble? And what we're doing is kind of taking that out of the picture. The way that I describe it is like bring your oven and your knives and put your sign on the door. And, that's kind of what we're providing. And so we've gotten some incredible feedback. We actually haven't even announced the project yet. That's going out on Monday. It's highly optimized. It's a post-COVID development, right? So you've got these micro units. Not only they're affordable, but they are flexible. You can sign a 6-month, 12-month lease. All of the parking spaces are optimized for to-go and delivery, so they're 10 minutes only. So there's plenty of parking off-site. That's where all the employees will park. But the whole intent is to make these restaurant units as efficient for these startups and chefs as we possibly can.
So you mentioned a word. I don't think we've talked about it yet, but can you talk about ghost kitchens? What is a ghost kitchen? Why is it a big deal? And so what's up with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question because ghost kitchens are a hot topic right now. They are going to be, in my opinion, one of the biggest trends of 2021. So a ghost kitchen, actually, they started out in California with Postmates because these big restaurants started realizing, okay, we're getting so many to-go orders and delivery orders that it is bogging down our in-house dining. And so they started building out kitchens that are specifically just to serve to-go and delivery. So basically, your Postmates, your Uber Eats, those types of products. So these ghost kitchens are affordable, right? Because you're not having to pay retail rates. You can literally pay industrial rates, which are the cheapest in real estate, build out a kitchen and start serving to go. And so, it's cutting down on costs. They can be shared by, multiple restaurants, or it can be a single concept. And basically what we've done is we've taken the ghost kitchen concept and just made it retail facing. So these restaurateurs, they're paying a little bit more than they would for just a pure ghost kitchen, but they're also getting to capture walk-by traffic. And it's a kind of the next step, right? So a lot of these chefs are starting their concepts in a ghost kitchen, but they need brick and mortar to really start getting that, recognition and, the brand recognition. And so this is kind of that first step before you really get into getting a big restaurant.
So that's pretty cool. And we are doing that where we're looking at the viability of it. And I think we're going to work it into the deal we're doing on Dickerson, the provisionary. So that's really exciting stuff. So we've learned a lot about you, your background, where you've come from, the things that you've done to get to where you are as the mayor of East Nashville. But so if we want to get in touch with you, we told them how to, look up the stuff about the offering that we have now, the new deal. How do people follow you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the best way to get in touch with me is on Instagram. Probably the same with you, right? Just go to commercial in Nashville with underscores in between. And I respond to every DM. I've had a ton of people reaching out from YouTube here recently because of that, asking about certain deals, asking about how to get involved in commercial real estate. And I'm always happy to answer that. Would love to start answering y'all's questions on the show, because, you're not the only one with some of the questions that you got. I promise that. And I'd love to help some more people out and answer that live here. So be sure to kind of check out our calendar and see whenever we're doing the live shows. Typically Bruce and I are going to be doing this Friday at 10 a.m. But, because of the holidays, we've kind of moved our schedule around a little bit for the next couple of weeks. But I think Friday at 10 a.m. is a pretty good time for both of us, right?
Yeah, and then we will take the recorded version of this live event. We're going to start popping it out to iTunes and the Stitcher and the SoundCloud right. And all that, Spotify. So you'll be able to follow us multiple different ways. But yeah, guys, we really want this to be interactive, right? We're going to be talking for the majority of the time. We'll have some guests from time to time, but it's really going to be about us covering a topic in extreme depth. But we really would like the interactivity. And if you come to this after the live event, post your questions there, and we'll still get back to you, and we'll try to do it public so everybody can see.
That's right. So that's it for today's show. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Follow Bruce on Instagram at apt.guy, and we will see y'all next time.
Later, guys.